In a quiet suburban neighborhood, where tree-lined streets and neatly trimmed lawns painted a picture of perfection, Claire lived with her teenage daughter, Emily. To anyone passing by, their home seemed like the epitome of happiness. Claire was known as a caring mother who always put her family first. She baked cookies for school events, volunteered at the local library, and made sure Emily never wanted for anything. But behind closed doors, things weren't as perfect as they appeared. Emily had recently started dating Alex, a kind-hearted young man with big dreams of becoming an architect. He was polite, respectful, and treated Emily like she was the most important person in his life. At first, Claire liked Alex. He came from a good family, had excellent grades, and seemed genuinely invested in making Emily happy. But everything changed when Claire's younger sister, Rachel, began visiting more often. Rachel was the complete opposite of Claire. While Claire was reserved and practical, Rachel thrived on drama and attention. She had a way of turning heads wherever she went, with her bold fashion choices and infectious laugh. But beneath her glamorous exterior lay a manipulative streak that often left chaos in her wake. Whenever Rachel visited, she brought an energy that disrupted the calm of Claire's household. Her late-night phone calls, unexpected drop-ins, and constant need for validation grated on Claire's nerves. One day, while Rachel was lounging in the living room during one of her visits, Claire noticed something unsettling. Alex, who usually focused all his attention on Emily, kept glancing at Rachel. It wasn't obvious, just a fleeting look here and there, but it was enough to make Claire uneasy. At first, she told herself she was imagining things. After all, Alex loved Emily. Why would he even think about looking at someone else? But then Rachel started flirting with him. It was subtle at first, a playful comment, a lingering touch on the arm. But soon it became impossible to ignore. Claire confronted Rachel about it, accusing her of trying to steal Alex away from Emily. Rachel laughed it off, saying Claire was overreacting. "I'm just being friendly," Rachel said with a shrug. "You're reading too much into this." Still, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel was up to something. The thought of losing control over her carefully constructed world terrified her. If Alex left Emily for Rachel, it would destroy the fragile balance Claire had worked so hard to maintain. And so, in a moment of desperation, Claire hatched a plan. Instead of confronting Alex or protecting Emily, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She convinced herself that if she nudged Alex toward Rachel, she could somehow manage the situation better. Little did she know, her decision would set off a chain of events that no one could have predicted. As days turned into weeks, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Emily remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her, trusting that her relationship with Alex was strong. Meanwhile, Claire wrestled with guilt, wondering if she was doing the right thing. And Rachel? She relished the attention, basking in the idea that she might win Alex away from her niece. What none of them realized was that their lives were about to change forever, and not in the way any of them expected. Months passed, and the once turbulent household began to settle into a calmer rhythm. The storm that had swept through their lives had left its mark, but it also brought clarity and growth. Emily and Alex were still taking things slow, rebuilding their relationship brick by brick. They spent hours talking about everything they had been through. The misunderstandings, the betrayals, and the pain, and found solace in knowing they weren't alone anymore. Their connection grew stronger with each passing day, not because it was perfect, but because they were determined to make it work. Claire, too, had changed in profound ways. She no longer felt the need to micromanage every aspect of her family's life. Instead, she focused on being present, listening more, judging less, and allowing her loved ones to navigate their own paths. Her relationship with Emily improved significantly as trust was slowly restored. One evening, while baking cookies together, a tradition from Emily's childhood, they shared a heartfelt laugh over how far they'd come. "We're going to be okay," Claire said softly, brushing flour off her hands. Emily smiled, nodding in agreement. For the first time in months, there was genuine warmth between them. The absence of Rachel continued to loom over the family, though it wasn't discussed openly. Occasionally, Claire wondered how her sister was doing, whether she had found happiness or peace in her new city. But deep down, she knew Rachel would always struggle with her need for attention and validation. It wasn't something anyone could fix for her. It was a lesson Rachel would have to learn on her own. Still, Claire hoped that someday, when Rachel was ready, they could reconnect without the weight of past mistakes hanging over them. As spring arrived, bringing fresh blooms and brighter days, the family decided to celebrate their resilience in a quiet way. They planned a small picnic at the park, inviting close friends and neighbors who had stood by them during the toughest times. There were no grand speeches or elaborate decorations, just good food, laughter, and the simple joy of being together. Even Mark, Claire's husband, joined in, cracking jokes and snapping photos to capture the moment. During the picnic, Emily pulled Alex aside for a private conversation. Standing under a blossoming cherry tree, she looked at him earnestly. "I think I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. "Ready for us to move forward, to really start over." Alex smiled, relief washing over his face. He took her hand gently, promising to cherish and respect her in a way he hadn't before. It wasn't a promise made lightly. It was one born out of reflection, effort, and mutual understanding. That night, as Claire tucked herself into bed, she reflected on how much had changed since the chaos of the party. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges ahead, but it was better. The scars remained, yes, but they served as reminders of what they had overcome together. She realized that sometimes healing didn't mean forgetting the past, but learning to carry it differently, using it as a foundation for growth rather than a burden. In the end, the ordeal taught them all valuable lessons about love, honesty, and forgiveness. Claire learned that control is an illusion, and true strength lies in letting go. Emily discovered that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. And Alex understood that relationships require effort, communication, and trust above all else. Though the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, they faced it together, united by their shared experiences. As the sun set on another day, casting golden hues across the sky, Claire whispered a silent prayer of gratitude, for second chances, for resilience, and for the hope that tomorrow would always bring something new. The evening of Rachel's engagement party arrived, and the community center buzzed with excitement. Twinkling fairy lights draped across the ceiling cast a warm glow over the room, while soft music played in the background. Guests mingled, sipping champagne and admiring the elegant floral arrangements that adorned every table. Rachel floated through the crowd like a queen surveying her kingdom, her diamond ring sparkling under the lights. She introduced Alex to friends and neighbors, beaming with pride as she announced their upcoming wedding plans. Claire stood near the dessert table, forcing smiles and exchanging pleasantries with guests, though her mind was elsewhere. Something about the night felt off, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. Emily lingered by the entrance, looking uncomfortable in her dress, while Mark chatted idly with an old colleague. The atmosphere seemed festive enough, but beneath the surface, tension simmered quietly. Then, just as the speeches were about to begin, the doors swung open, and a tall, confident man walked in. He scanned the room briefly before his eyes landed on Rachel. A knowing smile spread across his face as he strode toward her with purpose. Rachel froze mid-conversation, her expression shifting from surprise to panic in an instant. Her grip tightened on her glass, and her voice faltered as she attempted to introduce him casually to the group around her. "Oh, hi, Daniel," she said, her tone unnaturally high-pitched. "What are you doing here?" Daniel didn't miss a beat. His smile widened as he stepped closer, extending a hand to shake Alex. "You must be Alex," he said warmly, his voice smooth and commanding. "I've heard so much about you." Alex frowned, glancing between Rachel and this stranger. "Do I know you?" he asked cautiously, clearly sensing something unusual about the interaction. Rachel laughed nervously, waving a dismissive hand. "This is Daniel, an old friend. We go way back." But Daniel wasn't finished. With a playful chuckle, he added, "Actually, we're more than just friends. Rachel and I are married." The word hung in the air like a bombshell, silencing everyone within earshot. Plates clattered onto tables, and conversations died abruptly as heads turned toward the trio. Alex blinked rapidly, struggling to process what he'd just heard. "Married," he repeated, his voice rising slightly. "What do you mean married?" Rachel's cheeks flushed red as all eyes bore into her. She opened her mouth to speak but found no words. Daniel, unfazed by the commotion, pulled out his phone and showed Alex a photo album filled with pictures of him and Rachel together. On vacations, at dinner parties, even posing in front of a courthouse. "We tied the knot years ago," Daniel explained matter-of-factly. "Unfortunately, some paperwork got delayed, so technically, our marriage is still valid." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Claire dropped her napkin, her stomach sinking as realization dawned on her. Emily looked horrified, stepping back instinctively as if trying to distance herself from the chaos. Alex stared at Rachel. Betrayal etched across his face. "You never told me any of this," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "Were you planning to keep it a secret forever?" Rachel stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. I thought it didn't matter anymore. We haven't been together in years." Her attempt to justify herself only made things worse. Guests began whispering among themselves, shaking their heads in disbelief. The carefully crafted image Rachel had built for herself crumbled in front of everyone. As the confrontation escalated, Claire felt a wave of nausea wash over her. This wasn't just a personal drama. It was a public spectacle that exposed the cracks in their family. And worst of all, she knew she had played a role in setting the stage for this disaster. What had started as a celebration of love had turned into a nightmare none of them could have anticipated. The tension in Claire's household grew thicker with each passing day. What had started as a flicker of unease soon turned into an unspoken battle for attention, though only Claire and Rachel seemed to be aware of it. Emily, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents swirling around her, continued to focus on her relationship with Alex. She trusted him completely and believed their love was strong enough to withstand anything. But Claire's growing paranoia began to eat away at her peace of mind. Rachel, ever the opportunist, didn't miss a chance to insert herself into Alex's orbit. During one of her visits, she casually mentioned how mature he was compared to other boys his age. "You know," she said with a sly smile, brushing her hair over her shoulder, "it's rare to find someone so responsible these days." Her words were innocent enough, but the way she looked at him made Claire's stomach churn. Alex, caught off guard by Rachel's flattery, smiled politely but didn't say much. Still, Claire noticed the faint blush creeping up his neck and felt her heart sink. That night, after Rachel left, Claire couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, replaying the scene in her head. Was Rachel really trying to steal Alex from Emily? Or was Claire just being overly protective? The question swirled in her mind like a storm. By morning, she had convinced herself that Rachel's intentions were far from pure. If something happened between Alex and Rachel, it would crush Emily, and possibly ruin the family dynamic Claire had worked so hard to preserve. Determined to take control of the situation, Claire came up with a plan. Instead of confronting Alex or warning Emily, she decided to push him toward Rachel. In her twisted logic, if Alex chose Rachel willingly, Claire could manage the fallout better than if Rachel lured him away behind everyone's backs. It was a risky move, but fear clouded her judgment. She told herself it was for the best, even though guilt gnawed at the edges of her conscience. Over the next few weeks, Claire subtly planted seeds of doubt in Alex's mind. When they were alone, she'd mention how funny or adventurous Rachel was, implying that maybe Emily wasn't exciting enough for him. At first, Alex dismissed her comments, chalking them up to casual conversation. But as Claire persisted, he started to wonder if there was truth to what she was saying. After all, Rachel was captivating. Her confidence and charm were hard to ignore. Meanwhile, Rachel fed into the chaos without realizing Claire's role in it. She continued to flirt with Alex, dropping hints about how much she admired his ambition and intelligence. To her, it was all a game, a harmless way to make herself feel desirable. But to Claire, it felt like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. As the rift between Alex and Emily widened, Claire watched from the sidelines, torn between satisfaction and regret. On one hand, she felt a grim sense of accomplishment, knowing she was steering the situation according to her plan. On the other hand, she hated seeing the hurt in Emily's eyes whenever Alex seemed distant or distracted. Emily tried to brush it off, telling herself it was just stress from school or work. But deep down, she sensed something was wrong. Finally, Alex reached a breaking point. Torn between his feelings for Emily and the allure of Rachel, he decided to end things with Emily. He didn't give her a clear reason, mumbling something vague about needing space and time to figure things out. Emily was devastated. She begged him to explain, tears streaming down her face, but Alex refused to elaborate. All he could do was walk away, leaving Emily shattered and confused. For Claire, the aftermath was bittersweet. Her plan had worked. Alex was no longer with Emily. But the cost weighed heavily on her heart. Watching her daughter cry herself to sleep every night broke Claire in ways she hadn't anticipated. And Rachel? She celebrated her victory, oblivious to the pain she had caused. Little did any of them know, this was only the beginning of a much larger unraveling, one that would expose secrets none of them were prepared to face. The days following Alex's breakup with Emily were filled with an eerie silence in Claire's household. Emily, heartbroken and confused, retreated into herself. She stopped talking about Alex altogether, avoiding any mention of his name or the memories they once shared. Her laughter, once a constant presence in the house, became rare. Instead, she spent hours locked in her room, either scrolling through her phone aimlessly or staring out the window with a distant look on her face. Claire watched her daughter's pain with growing guilt, but didn't know how to fix what she had broken. Rachel, on the other hand, was thriving. With Alex now officially free, she wasted no time stepping into the role of his new partner. She flaunted their budding relationship at every opportunity, making sure everyone, including Emily, knew that she had won. Rachel would casually drop comments during family dinners, like, "Alex is such a sweetheart. He brought me flowers yesterday." Or, "We're thinking of going hiking this weekend. It's our thing now." Each remark felt like a dagger aimed directly at Emily's already fragile heart. Claire tried to intervene subtly, urging Rachel to tone down her behavior around Emily. "She's still healing," Claire whispered one evening when Rachel announced plans to post a selfie with Alex online. But Rachel brushed her off with a dismissive wave. "Oh, come on, Claire. She'll get over it. Besides, life goes on." Her nonchalant attitude only fueled Claire's frustration, though she kept her emotions bottled up, afraid of admitting her own role in the mess. As for Alex, he struggled with mixed feelings. While Rachel's confidence and charm initially drew him in, he soon realized that being with her wasn't as simple as he'd imagined. Rachel was demanding, always wanting his attention and validation. She texted him constantly, grew upset if he didn't reply immediately, and insisted on tagging along to places where he preferred solitude. At the same time, he couldn't stop thinking about Emily, the way she used to laugh at his jokes, the quiet moments they shared without needing words. Guilt gnawed at him, but pride prevented him from reaching out to her. Emily, meanwhile, began isolating herself even more. She stopped joining family gatherings and barely spoke during meals. When Claire asked her how she was doing, Emily would simply shrug and say, "I'm fine," before excusing herself. Claire knew her daughter was far from fine, but she didn't know how to bridge the gap between them. Every attempt to comfort Emily felt hollow, overshadowed by the knowledge that Claire had played a part in her pain. One afternoon, while cleaning the living room, Claire stumbled upon an old photo album tucked away in a drawer. Flipping through its pages, she found pictures of Emily as a child. smiling brightly, hugging her stuffed animals, running through sprinklers in the backyard. The sight of those happy moments hit Claire like a punch to the gut. She remembered how much joy Emily had brought into her life and how fiercely she had vowed to protect her daughter from harm. Now, looking back, Claire realized she had done the exact opposite. That night, unable to sleep, Claire sat by the kitchen table, staring at the wall. Her mind replayed the events leading up to Alex and Emily's breakup, each memory heavier than the last. She thought about Rachel's manipulative games, Alex's confusion, and Emily's silent suffering. For the first time, Claire allowed herself to fully confront the consequences of her actions. She had convinced herself she was protecting her family, but all she had done was tear it apart. Despite her remorse, Claire knew she couldn't undo what had been done. The damage was already set in motion, and there was no telling where things would go next. Rachel continued to parade her relationship with Alex as if it were some great achievement, oblivious to the cracks forming beneath the surface. And Emily? She remained trapped in her cocoon of sadness, unsure if she'd ever trust again. Unbeknownst to anyone, however, a new twist awaited them, one that would shake the foundation of their lives and force everyone to confront truths they weren't ready to face. As the days passed, tension simmered quietly, waiting for the moment when everything would come crashing down. The days following the disastrous party felt like a blur for everyone involved. The once buzzing neighborhood gossip mill slowed to a crawl, not because people had stopped talking, but because the story was so shocking that it left them unsure of what to say next. Rachel disappeared from the scene almost immediately, claiming she needed space to figure things out. In reality, she couldn't face the humiliation of being exposed as someone who had lied to her family and nearly married another man while still legally bound to her first husband. For Claire, the aftermath was a whirlwind of guilt and regret. She replayed every decision she'd made in her head, dissecting how she had let her insecurities and misguided intentions spiral into such chaos. Her attempt to control the situation by pushing Alex toward Rachel had backfired spectacularly, leaving her daughter heartbroken and her family fractured. Late at night, when the house was quiet, Claire would sit by Emily's closed door, wanting to knock and apologize, but too afraid of rejection to take the first step. Emily, meanwhile, was slowly piecing herself back together. At first, she avoided Alex entirely, unable to look him in the eye without feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. But over time, curiosity got the better of her. She began to wonder if Alex had truly wanted to be with Rachel, or if he had been swept up in the drama Rachel created. One afternoon, after weeks of silence, Emily decided to reach out. She sent him a simple text, "Can we talk?" Alex hesitated before replying. He knew their relationship had ended under messy circumstances, but deep down, he missed Emily more than he cared to admit. They met at a small cafe near the park, sitting across from each other awkwardly at first. Neither knew where to start, but eventually the dam broke. Alex confessed everything: how Rachel's charm had blindsided him, how Claire's subtle comments had planted seeds of doubt, and how he had acted impulsively without thinking about the consequences. "I never stopped caring about you," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "But I messed up. Badly." To his surprise, Emily didn't lash out or storm off. Instead, she listened quietly, absorbing his words. When he finished, she took a deep breath and said, "I don't know if I can trust you again. Not yet. But maybe we can try to fix this, one step at a time." It wasn't forgiveness, not fully, but it was a start. For the first time in months, both of them felt a glimmer of hope. Claire, desperate to make amends, finally worked up the courage to have an honest conversation with Emily. Sitting across from her daughter in the living room, Claire poured her heart out. She explained why she had meddled in Emily's relationship, acknowledging how selfish and wrong it had been. "I thought I was protecting you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But all I did was hurt you, and I'm so sorry." Emily stared at her mother for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, softly, she said, "I need time to process everything. But thank you for telling me the truth. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was enough for now." Claire hugged her tightly, vowing to be better, not just as a mother, but as a person. As for Rachel, her absence lingered heavily in the household. Though no one spoke of her openly, her actions cast a shadow over their lives. Claire reached out to her sister once, leaving a voicemail asking if she was okay, but Rachel never responded. Eventually, word came through mutual acquaintances that Rachel had moved to another city, seeking a fresh start far away from the wreckage she had left behind. Life slowly began to return to normal, or at least, a new version of it. Emily and Alex rebuilt their bond cautiously, learning to communicate openly and rebuild trust. Claire focused on repairing her relationship with Emily, prioritizing honesty and understanding above all else. The scars of the past remained, but they served as reminders of lessons learned. That love should never come at the cost of truth, and that secrets, no matter how deeply buried, always find a way to surface. The room fell silent as the stranger, Daniel, stood confidently beside Rachel, his presence commanding attention. He smiled warmly at the crowd, but there was something unsettling about the way he looked at Rachel, like he knew a secret no one else did. "It's been too long," Daniel said, his voice calm yet firm. Rachel's face turned pale, her lips parting in shock as she took a step back. Who are you?" she stammered, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. Her attempt to laugh it off came out strained, earning curious glances from the guests. Claire watched the scene unfold with wide eyes, her heart pounding in her chest. This wasn't part of the plan, whatever this was. Daniel tilted his head, his smile unwavering. "Rachel didn't tell you. I'm her husband." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and whispers erupted as people exchanged bewildered looks. Alex, standing nearby, froze mid-sip of his drink, his hand trembling slightly. Emily's jaw dropped, her expression a mix of disbelief and anger. Even Claire, who had orchestrated much of the chaos leading up to this moment, couldn't believe what she was hearing. Rachel tried to recover, forcing a nervous laugh. "Oh, come on, Daniel. Stop joking around. You know we're not together anymore." Her voice wavered, betraying her panic. Daniel raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by her act. "Actually," he replied, pulling out a folded document from his jacket pocket, "we're very much still married. According to these papers, our divorce was never finalized." A hush fell over the room as Daniel held up the document for everyone to see. Rachel snatched it from his hands, scanning it frantically. Her shoulders slumped as she realized he was telling the truth. The legal technicalities she had ignored years ago had finally caught up with her, and now they were on full display in front of her family, friends, and fiancé-to-be. Alex stepped forward, his face a mixture of confusion and betrayal. "What is he talking about, Rachel?" he demanded, his voice rising slightly. Rachel opened her mouth to respond but found no words. Instead, tears welled up in her eyes as she struggled to explain herself. I didn't think it mattered," she finally managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "We haven't been together in years. I assumed everything was taken care of." But her excuses only made things worse. Alex shook his head, looking more hurt than angry. "You lied to me," he said, his tone heavy with disappointment. "You led me to believe you were free to start a new life. With me. And now I find out you're still married. How could you do this?" Rachel's composure crumbled completely. She sank into a nearby chair, covering her face with her hands. Guests began murmuring among themselves, some shaking their heads in disapproval, while others whispered theories about what had really happened. Claire stood frozen, guilt washing over her as she realized the magnitude of the disaster she had helped create. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a public humiliation that affected everyone involved. As the confrontation escalated, Daniel remained calm, almost amused by the chaos. He pulled out his phone and showed photos of him and Rachel on vacation, at dinner parties, and attending events together. We've stayed in touch over the years, he explained casually, as if discussing the weather. I thought she'd handle the paperwork, but apparently she forgot, or chose to ignore it. By the end of the night, the party had dissolved into a scene of awkward goodbyes and hasty exits. Alex stormed out without another word to Rachel, leaving her sobbing in the corner. Emily watched silently, her emotions unreadable. Claire approached Rachel cautiously, unsure of what to say. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she asked softly, though part of her already knew the answer. Rachel wiped her tears, her voice trembling. "Because I didn't want to deal with it. I thought I could move on without fixing the past. But now," she trailed off, unable to finish her sentence. For the first time, Rachel looked small and vulnerable, stripped of her usual bravado. As the guests dispersed and the lights dimmed, the weight of the evening settled over them all. Secrets had been exposed, relationships shattered, and trust broken beyond repair. What started as a celebration of love had ended in betrayal, and none of them would ever be the same again. Weeks turned into a month, and life in Claire's household settled into an uneasy rhythm. Emily remained distant, spending most of her time either at school or holed up in her room. Alex had officially moved on with Rachel, though his enthusiasm for the relationship seemed to wane with each passing day. Meanwhile, Rachel reveled in her newfound status as the center of attention, basking in the drama she had created. It was only a matter of time before she decided to take things to the next level. One evening, Rachel made an announcement during one of her uninvited visits. She stood dramatically in the middle of Claire's living room, holding a glass of sparkling cider like it was champagne. "I have big news," she declared with a wide grin, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Everyone paused what they were doing. Claire looked up from her knitting. Emily glanced over from her book, and even Claire's husband, Mark, who rarely paid attention to Rachel's antics, raised an eyebrow. "I'm throwing a party," Rachel exclaimed, practically bouncing on her toes. "And not just any party. It's going to be the event of the season. We're celebrating my engagement to Alex." The room fell silent. Claire nearly dropped her knitting needles, while Emily's face went pale. Mark cleared his throat awkwardly, unsure how to react. Rachel, oblivious to the tension, continued gushing about the details: themed decorations, catered food, and a guest list that included everyone they knew. "What do you mean, engagement?" Claire finally asked, her voice tight. Rachel rolled her eyes playfully, as if Claire was being overly dramatic. "Oh, come on, sis. You didn't think we'd just date forever, did you? Alex proposed last weekend. Isn't it romantic?" She held out her left hand, flashing a modest diamond ring that caught the light. Claire forced a smile, though her stomach churned. She hadn't seen this coming. Not so soon, anyway. Emily, still frozen in place, managed to mutter a quiet excuse before retreating to her room. The sound of her door closing echoed through the house, breaking the awkward silence. Rachel frowned slightly but quickly shrugged it off. "Teenagers," she muttered under her breath. "Anyway, everyone's invited. I rented out the community center downtown. It's going to be amazing." As Rachel rattled on about color schemes and playlists, Claire felt a growing sense of dread. Something about the whole situation felt off. Rachel had always been impulsive, jumping headfirst into decisions without thinking them through. But an engagement? This wasn't like buying a new dress or signing up for a dance class. It was a lifelong commitment. And Alex, he barely seemed happy lately. Was he really ready for this? Later that night, after Rachel had left, Claire sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the invitation Rachel had left behind. It was printed on glossy cardstock, adorned with gold foil lettering and swirling designs. The words, "Join us for a celebration of love," mocked her from the page. Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. The next day, Emily reluctantly agreed to attend the party, though it was clear she wasn't looking forward to it. "I just want to see what happens," she said quietly when Claire pressed her for a reason. Deep down, Claire suspected Emily wanted answers, or maybe closure. Whatever the case, the entire family prepared for the event with mixed emotions. Claire tried convincing herself it would be fine, that nothing bad could happen at a simple celebration. But a nagging voice in the back of her mind whispered otherwise. On the day of the party, the air buzzed with anticipation. Guests arrived dressed in their finest outfits, chatting excitedly as they admired the elaborate decorations. Rachel floated around the room, glowing with pride as she introduced Alex to friends and neighbors. Everything seemed perfect, too perfect, almost. Then, just as the evening reached its peak, a stranger walked in. Tall, confident, and unmistakably familiar, he approached Rachel with a knowing smile. No one recognized him at first, but his presence sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. Rachel's smile faltered as she locked eyes with the man. For the first time, her usual bravado slipped, replaced by a flicker of panic. The stranger greeted her warmly, calling her by a name no one had heard before. And just like that, the carefully constructed facade began to crumble, leaving everyone stunned, including Claire, who realized too late that the night was far from over.